Hi, I'm B from Nectar Mechanics, and in today's video, we're going to be making Bingo from Bluey. So I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I didn't fully understand the Bluey craze at first. I was like, it's a kid's show about a talking dog. Okay. But then a special someone came and showed me it, you know who you are, and I fell in love with it. It's so wholesome, it's so cute, it's what kids shows should be. And regardless of that, because it's also trying to teach the parents stuff, it's enjoyable to watch no matter what age you are. Now while the show is titled Bluey, Bingo's the real star, right? Sure, Bluey's had her own various adventures or whatever, but Bingo's got the one with the space and the rabbit and stuff like that. Just all of the most wholesome episodes. And so, we're gonna make Bingo. Now, I'm gonna be doing her as a static clay model. So to start off with this, we're going to be making a wire skeleton. I definitely don't want her to snap. That's going to be nightmare fuel. So we're going to make sure she's as strong as she can be. So once we've done the wire armature and we posed it how we want with a little wave and everything, it was time to add the tinfoil. We do tinfoil because not only does it make them stronger, if you crinkle up it has a tooth so that it can grab the clay, but it's also saving money. Once a basic blobby outline was done, I got to work adding the clay. It's really tricky trying to explain clay tips because a lot of this has been learnt by doing. One thing I always recommend is do fluffy characters because you don't have to worry about getting fingerprints and stuff on it because afterwards you're just going to score it with a knife and add texture so no one will see it. But with Bingo, she's different to the other clay models I've done in that she's an entirely 2D character. There has been no 3D version of it or interpretation like that. I guess technically Cyber Bunny was 2D, but still, this is like kind of different. So some of it was trying to gauge what was perspective and what was just the shape. For instance, whenever they look at you head on, they usually got their nose to one side. So when I was doing that, I had to figure out, oh, that's the cheek, and that's why that one eye is bigger or smaller than whatever. It's not because it's smaller, it's because it's further away. Perspective. So I was starting off trying to get just a general vague shape and making it have the silhouette and the recognizability. I also forgot to add the tail, so we'll do that as well while the clay's still soft. Doing the face, I always find, even though it's a cartoon character, to sort of think of where the muscle groups would be. For instance, if you look at my face, you can see that my eyes are kind of inset. There's like this ridge around it, yeah? And so when you're making your clay models, you want to add a little extra clay around the top and then to add the eyes inset. This feels kind of obvious, but it took me a while to figure out. Now, the one thing I found really tricky was the proportions. She kept accidentally looking like her mum Chili, more stretched out. And even in the final model, she's probably more stretched than she should be, lengthwise. But that's okay. It just needs to look close enough, right? I'm not going for one-to-one accuracy. I'm going for, you can tell who it is, but it's also clearly handmade. Now, one thing you'll notice is that her right leg's got a bit of wire sticking out the bottom of it. This is intentional, because it means that I have something to kind of grip onto. Should have made it longer for that to be helpful, but still. And it also means that when I make her base, I can just drive that into the base and glue it, making it stronger than just gluing from her bottoms of the feet. Now, to try and counter the fact that she kind of looks like Chili, I'm going to also give her the rabbit, Floppy, from the Sleepy Time episode. Chili doesn't have Floppy, but Bingo does. Now it's even more recognizable. Floppy was a little bit easier than Bingo because they're smaller and I don't need to make them particularly detailed, but I do need to make them look not alive, right? They're a plushie. So I'm trying to give them that sort of sat down, slumped look. They're kind of all sort of, you know, floppy. Even though it was kind of an afterthought, I was still able to make it tie in. Bingo's right arm was just sort of down by her side, so I could make it look like Bingo was holding Floppy and dragging them along. Now, one thing you'll notice occasionally is that the eyeballs come and go. I tried to sculpt them with the eyeballs originally in them, but when we get to our next step, which is painting, I kept getting paint on them. So don't worry, the nightmare fuel will end, but we need to get painting first. Originally, I tried to paint the colors as if it was the final colors first go, but you always need to do multiple coats, and I realized that if I use stronger versions of those colors, so a bright orange and a bright yellow, then I could just add layers of white and other different shades to sort of dilute it and saturate it a bit. So Bingo had to make sure that she had her patches of the darker oranges, the stripes on her back, making sure the mouth and everything was that yellow. It's more of a white, and it will look more white later on, but for now it's a neon yellow. The only problem with doing my knife fur technique is that it's really hard to get into the gaps. And in hindsight, I could probably do a wash of some sort, like a base coat wash that's a runnier paint than the standard paint, and that way it would naturally seep into the model. But for now, I'm just gonna try spending hours meticulously poking paint to the gaps and still missing a few bits. I know they're there, and it bugs me. Normally I tend to primer my models, but I'm finding with the air dry clay that unless it's a really smooth model, it doesn't really matter. And because she's got the fur texture, definitely doesn't matter. Floppy was a lot easier than Bingo because they're essentially just one solid color of purple. But I did make sure to do dry brushing of different kinds of shades to make it a bit more interesting. And with the fur texture, you could tell the low spots from the high spots, and it just looked a lot more interesting. Now, what's a model without a base, right? Where are they gonna stand on? Where are they? Well, they're normally in their house. So let's make the little wooden floors they've got. To do that, I used my metal rings that I've got to trace out the right size circle that would be able to fit both Floppy and Bingo. And then cut that out 3 times just on some cardboard, sandwich those together, then I would cut strips of even thickness, thinner cardboard, like the cornflake packet ones, and then cut those up and glue them all in the same direction on top, then trimming them around the edges so that it looks like floorboards. Once I'd done that, I needed to give it a smooth edge, and previous times I've done stuff like air dry clay or whatever, or just wood filler and stuff to get rid of that corrugation holes. But for this, it's easy enough to just get a long strip of cornflake cardboard again and hot glue it around the side. Painting the base was easy enough. I did a base coat of the various yellows and sort of wood colors, then I would do a black wash, and I kind of used too much wash and started making it look messy. So to kind of hide that and also add to it, I used a little square of red felt to look like the carpet they have in their living room. Then once it was all painted, it was just a matter of making sure they had their eyeballs sorted, gluing them all together, gluing them to the base, making sure everything was secure, and I think that's it. So without further ado, it's time for Bingo. Doesn't that look so good? I was so nervous the eyes were going to turn out kind of creepy looking, but I think I nailed it. That balance between handcrafted and cartoon, I got pretty close. This is a bit of an easier project to do than my Laserbeak print that I've been doing, so that's why there's no work in progress videos. I just managed to do it in 1 week. Clay projects are a little bit less time consuming than having to wait for printers to work and designing and whatnot. But I hope you still enjoyed. I really enjoyed making it, and I finally made something from Bluey. I've been wanting to for a little while now, thinking of making a Unihorse puppet, and I might still do it if people are interested. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next week. Farewell!